Hi, I'm Coach Michael BURT. To get a free copy of my book, Inside the Mind of a Monster, text 678-506-7543. Text to get a copy of my book, Inside the Mind of a Monster, and I'm going to turn you into a legendary creature. All right, I see 18 folks on here tonight, and what I really wanted to do the other day from the workshop is I knew I couldn't get to all the questions that people were asking, and I wanted to be honest with you, I wanted to weed out people that were not serious, and I wanted to get down to serious coaches who wanted to spend time and get better. And that's one reason I offered the workshop, the Wednesday night thing for you guys to jump on here with me. That way I know who's serious, who's hungry, who wants to get better, all those type things. So as we go, what I'd like to do is take questions. I think the best way to do this is to take questions from you, and let's play pitch and catch with each other, because I only want to cover things you want to cover based on, if you saw me on Friday, I basically broke down the science of confidence, and I wrote a book on that called Swag. And then I came back and talked about Prey Drive on Saturday, which is the activation of that animal instinct in a person to go get it. And I'd be happy to share how we did it. I'd be happy to share how we did it, the strategies I used, the tactics I used today, the psychology of Prey Drive, or building a program, whatever you guys want to talk about tonight. So
then I'll start it off on that measure. Say that you're starting over at Riverdale as a boys coach now. A, how would you install that Prey Drive? And B, how would you build that entire program around Swag and Prey Drive?
Okay. All right. Great question. So I want you to think of it like this. I believe all humans have a prey drive in them. The challenge is that nobody's ever activated that drive. And so when players came to me at 14 years old, I want you to think about that whole person. They had some knowledge, they had some skill, they had some drive, and they had some confidence, but nothing compared to what they needed to play for me. They had been playing at a very amateur level. Okay. Nobody had really ever pushed them the way I was going to push them. Nobody ever really tested them mentally, emotionally, physically the way I was going to test them. So they come in and they literally have no idea that what level they're going to play at. Like they're going from the minor leagues to the major leagues. And so they would come in their mind, and many of you face this, and they actually believed in their mind they had played hard. They had been at a high level because they don't know any different. Well, one activator of Prey Drive is exposure. You show them this is the level to play at a higher frequency. This is the level of action you have to take. This is the level that we're going to be operating at, because many of them just didn't know. So the way we did that, Adam, is I had a full-time strength and conditioning coach who was one of my assistant coaches, and he had one job: to get them emotionally and physically tough enough to play for me. And I would say to him, you have these players from this time to this time. Now, let's talk about all the tactics, strategies, competitions, everything you can do to activate the drive in these people. And we did everything. Now, you got to remember, this was X number of years ago. We had boot camps. We had games and scavenger hunts. We had kickboxing things. We had games where we had Red Dawn, where they had to come in at 4:30 in the morning for X number of days. Like, we did everything you could possibly do to activate the drive. And he would come to me in October, because when he was coaching those people, I would go over to the weight room, but I didn't interfere. He was the strength coach. I said, you're the strength coach. That's why I hired you. And literally in October, he would come to me and he said, they're ready. They have been properly groomed. They have been mentally tough enough. They have been really pushed and battle tested. Coach, they are ready to play for you. And that was one of the best things I ever did. Now, this was almost unheard of in 1999, me having a strength and conditioning coach for women. Men had it, football teams had it, but girls basketball did not have full-time strength and conditioning coaches in those days. So I was one of the first ones in Tennessee. So Adam, what I would do if I started over again at Riverdale is I would say, I'm going to grow all 4 parts of their nature: body, mind, heart, and spirit. Okay. All 4 parts of their nature, I'm going to go to work on. And I'm going to have a physical component. I'm going to have mental components. I'm going to have emotional components. And I'm going to use the word spiritual components, but that's more confidence, because I was teaching at a public high school. So confidence building. And I would ration out those things, and I would have parts of the day where we hit every single part of their nature. Then I would truly understand, get to know the players at a very deep level. You know, one of the things we do today that we didn't do in those days is in the business world, we do personality profiling, where we literally look at what are motivators, what are demotivators, how do you handle stress, how do you handle pressure. If I went back to Riverdale today, I would do personality profiling on the players. And I would know this player can't handle pressure. This player struggles with stress. This player is selfish. This player is this. Like, those personality profiles, like, tell you everything you need to know. And I'll do you one more. We're developing a prey drive assessment where you will literally be able to give a person an assessment, and it'll tell you how high their prey drive is. Is it low? Is it medium? Is it high? And that's an important component. Okay. Adam, does that help you?
Yes.
But the point that most coaches miss, to your point, Adam, is they don't know how to activate the drive in players, so they use one method, and that one method is fear, which is what I did from 22 to 25, and it didn't work. Like, it worked to a point, but I certainly didn't win any championships during that period. I believe when you borrow strength from your position of power, you build weakness in the relationship. So you can motivate through fear, and those players will yield to you because you're an authority figure, but emotionally they'll quit on you. And so that was if you remember my talk on Saturday, I said a key decision for me at 25 years old was to be a coach people love playing for. I want to be intense and positive, not intense and negative. And that was a significant shift for me. When I made that decision, everything changed, guys. Everything changed. People began playing really, really hard for me. Okay.
Hey, Michael, the prey drive assessment you mentioned you're developing, do you have a timeline for that?
You know, I'm working with Tony Alessandria. Tony Alessandria created the DISC profile, and I'm certified in the DISC. So it's in the very early stages. Right now, I'm writing a book on prey drive. That'll be a national book. It'll be in all the bookstores and airports. I think that'll be at least a year out.
Okay, thank you.
But in the interim, if I had to go back and be a head coach again, I would use the DISC. And it tells me how to communicate with the player. It tells me, you know, here's a good example. I used to think, and I'm sure many of you guys are really good at what you do, and I used to believe I could take anybody, Peter, and make them into something great. And I hired an assistant in my business because she worked out at 4:30 in the morning. That was her deal. She'd get up and go to CrossFit in the morning. So I told my wife, I'm like, this woman's tough. She's got to be tough, because she gets up at 4:30 and works out at CrossFit. CrossFit's one of the toughest things in the world. And so I hired her to be my assistant, and she was a terrible assistant. She wasn't mentally tough. And then I went back and looked at her profile, and her profile said, when you add pressure, she becomes disorganized. And so I went home and I told my wife, I'm like, well, here's the problem. And she's like, well, whose fault was it? Her fault for taking the job, or your fault for hiring her? It was my fault. She right? That's who she was. When you add pressure to that woman, she just shuts down. Well, you don't want to work with a guy like me with that personality. Okay. So what I'm telling you, Peter, is I'd go back, and sometimes I used to try to push players, and they'd break down and cry, and then they would shut down, and then they wouldn't play hard. Well, if I would have known, if I did that DISC profile, it would have told me that. It would tell me when you apply pressure, what they do. It would tell me what environments. It would tell me how they handle stress. It would tell me, why they need attention. It would tell me why they're so dominant and selfish. Okay. I mean, it would have told me everything. So if I went back today and did it, I would be using some form of a personality profile with every player. And I would say this is going to help me communicate with you better. This is going to help me be a better communicator to you when I understand your personality. Okay.
Besides DISC, what other personality profiles have you been exposed to? I know I've been exposed to DISC for years, but the cost involved with that and the time early on, we took a huge budget cut during the times we're in right now. So I'm like, okay, we got to come up with the money. I got to come up with money to cover part of my transportation costs now too. So taking money away from that, decreasing the experience for the athlete is balancing your money right now is a question. So is there a more cost-effective one you could use, or you'd recommend that you've heard of that?
How many total players do you have, Peter?
16.
Yeah. I mean, we do the disc. I think we charge $99 per person, $100 a person. So if we did it for you, it'd be $1,600. There are free versions out there. I know Tony Robbins has a free version. John Maxwell may have a free version, but the problem with the free versions is they don't go into the full detail.
I knew that. Yeah.
And the one I do gives you 39 pages of information about the person. And, so, I mean, we may be able to cut it some to help you if you want us to do it for you. I could talk to my president and just say, hey, how low can we go on this? Because we buy it from Alexandria, right? And then we turn around and sell it. But one of the things I do for companies is what I would do, Peter, if you did that, is I would turn around and do a coaching session with you and how to use that, how to coach to the disc. That makes sense.
Thanks.
Okay. All right. Good. That's a great question. Next question. All right, David.
Michael, I got a question for you.
Okay.
We have a young man who's going to be a senior, has a lot of talent, but he's struggles in school and he's not really connected with us in our program. And everybody's kind of said, well, we get frustrated with him and people have kind of written him off. What's our best approach with him?
How much time have you spent with that person?
Well, my plan was this spring, during our spring semester, to spend some time with him, but the corona kind of derailed that. So we've been doing, as a team, weekly meetings and different things, but he's not connected. He's not showed up to anything.
Yeah. And why do you think he's a talented kid?
Yeah.
Why do you think he's not connected? Is he emotionally tough, emotional toughness?
He is, and I've done this for a long time, worked with a lot of kids, and he is, we've had so many people reach out to him in a positive way, and he just doesn't, nothing connects.
I think when you think about, I just think about my options if that kid was my kid, and we know left to his own devices, he's probably not going to come around. So the question is, if I spend more time with him, more energy with him, if I show him, will the light switch go off and will he come around? If he has a mentor or a peer or someone else that he looks up to, talk to him, because sometimes they need to hear it from another person. But I think all you can do as a coach, in my case, mistake I made early in my career is when players wouldn't respond, I moved away from them. Like I wouldn't pay attention to them. I wouldn't give them any time. I wouldn't do that. Then I decided, no, I need to spend more time with them. And then when I spend more time with them, they responded better to me. But the kid has got to have a basic desire to be a part of a group. I mean, that's part of the team, right?
Yeah.
And if he doesn't,
and of course, as football coaches, a lot of our, it's kind of our nature to say, okay, well, if you're not going to join us, we'll go on to the next guy. But I understand what you're saying. It's just, unfortunately, with the spring and not having school, it kind of derailed that process.
Well, I'm a big Covey disciple, as you guys know, which I strongly recommend. A guy who wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Mm-hmm. And his best book, in my opinion, was The 8th Habit, where he talks about the whole person theory in depth. And that was a book that really changed my coaching career. When a person has a broken heart or a crushed spirit for some reason that may have nothing to do with you, Paul, like it may have nothing to do with you. And I think about the emotional bank account. What happens when a person has a broken heart or a crushed spirit is they distance themselves from people, right? They withdraw and they don't want to be part of it. And something you may look at if you look at his personality profile, what would he say? It may say he wants to be alone. He doesn't want to be part of a group. He doesn't want to be a part of a team. So all you can do is go to work on building the emotional bank account with him.
Okay, thanks.
And do everything you can there. It's a great question, though. All right, I got some questions in the Q&A. Let's see what we got. On the perception test, if they are all positive questions, would you share it with your team? And Paul asked that question. You know, I didn't have all positive things on there, Paul. I had tough questions on my perception test. Who's the hardest working player? Who's the laziest team player? Who creates the best energy? Who creates the worst energy? Who's the hardest working player in the weight room? Who creates the most drama? Okay. And, you know, I was coaching girls, and so not all of my questions on the perception test were positive.
Right. And that's why I asked that question. If they were all positive, it becomes more of, I want to make the top 5, top 10 thing. That was my thinking. I'm just curious what your thoughts
I
are.
don't think you would go wrong by having a positive reinforcement one and saying you could still, well, here's how we did that. Let's say everybody here on this is on my team. We give every single person a test. We let you rate each other completely, completely autonomous, completely free of nobody knowing. And then we go back and we average the mean average of the score. And let's say Kenny Schmidt came up to his average score was number 6. So he was the 6th person in that category. And, but it would tell us who was number 1, who was number 15. And I would just call the players in. And if it was positive, I'd say, man, look, your teammates rank you number 1 in this, this, and this. Congratulations. Now, or if it was negative, I would say, look, you don't really want to be rated the laziest player on the team, right? Like, come on. And they would go, no, sir. And I'd say, okay, what can we do? We're going to do this test 30 days from today. And I'd love to see you move. So here's specifically, this is some coaches have got to get. Too many coaches are very generic with their players, and you need to be very specific. There's 3 things you got to do to turn this around. Okay. This is specifically what you got to do to get in the top 8. This is specifically what you got to do to get off the bench and play. This is specifically what you got to do. Too many people are very generic. Like, you got to work harder. Like, I had a high school coach, and here's what he told me: you're too slow. That's all he ever told me. You move too slow. And I wasn't that athletic, but it would have been nice if he said, you don't move at a pace we need. You need to get back on defense faster. You need to push the ball harder up the court. You need to do this. All he would tell me is, man, Bert, you're too slow. You're just too slow. And he never told me. We never did quickness exercises. We never did, ladder. We never did anything to improve my slowness, so to speak. He just told me I was slow. And that didn't help me. Or I was like, okay, what does he mean? Like, I don't seem slow. I don't feel like I'm slow compared to so-and-so. I'm not slow, but that's what he always said to me. And I was like, well, be specific with me. Okay. Tell me specifically what I got to do. Sharon Carney, were you able to get the swag ebook ready? My marketing team is waiting on that. I'll check on that. And for some reason, there was a glitch in that ebook when we sent it out the other day. And I know they were working with the publisher on getting that. As soon as we get that ready, we'll resend it back out to you. Okay.
Okay. I tried to open it too. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah. For some reason, that was a funnel, and when it sent it out, for some reason it didn't transfer. And that's the first time that's ever happened. So we had to go back and figure out what the problem was on that. But as soon as they get it fixed, I'll have my marketing team just resend the email out to everybody, and you should be able to click and get it. Did everybody get the ebook? The Audible book with the chapters?
No, sir.
Nope.
All right. There was an email that went back out on Sunday that said here's the audible version. There's like 8 chapters, but I will have Katrina, my marketing department, resend that one too. And it's like 8 chapters of the book on audio.
That one does work.
That one does work. Okay, good.
Yes.
I didn't see that one come in. So. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Austin Ward, let me go through this question and come back. Is there a confidence ebook? Yeah, that one's the swag book I was talking about. Confidence. In your opinion, what's the key difference between coaching girls and coaching guys? I'm the head boys tennis coach, but I'm looking to coach girls tennis as well. I would just tell you, guys, I coached guys my first 2 years. I loved it. And then I started coaching girls, and then I swore I would never go back to coaching boys again. I absolutely loved coaching girls. They wanted to build a team atmosphere. Sure, they come along with other things. They had more emotion. They have more emotional things. But at the end of the day, they really were such a joy to coach. And I loved the fact that they wanted to do what I asked them to do. They wanted to build a team. They were more team-oriented versus selfish-oriented. So I think the reason I did that too, by the way, is I wanted to diversify my resume. Is while I was in college, I was already coaching, but I was coaching boys. And one summer, I said, I really want to coach girls and boys so I can get a job either way. and I started coaching girls AAU basketball. Loved it, and that's really what turned me on to coaching girls. And then I was fortunate enough to get a girls coaching job. So I think you'll love coaching the girls. There is a little bit of difference between. I think the biggest difference you're going to see is I think you're going to enjoy it. I think you're going to. Boys are just wired differently. You know, they have a different prey drive than girls. Girls are more in tune with each other. They're more likely to want to please the coach. They're, you know, now they can break down and start crying, and they can become emotional, and that was something, a part of it. But at the same time, I absolutely love that. So great question.
Thank you. Back to the perception test. When you handed out to your girls basketball team, probably again 15 to 18 players, I'm guessing, when they ranked it, did they just say the hardest working player and list one, or did they rank 1 through 18 every player?
They ranked 1 through 18 every player. And
so
then,
for every category, they went through the entire roster and gave you a number of where they thought the people fit.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, and then that's where we got the median score, and we,
right.
you know, and then that's where we put people into that. You're number 5, you're number 7. And I think I had 10 questions. I think I had 5 positive and 5 negatives, just to be honest with you, if I remember correctly. But I wanted to use that as a motivator. And here's the thing. Most people are blind. As you know, one thing I say today is you can't see the picture when you're inside the frame. Most people are blind, have blind spots. Their perception of themselves is heavily skewed, especially when they're that age. So the perception test was literally one of the best things I ever did, because it said, these are your peers. It's not me. It's because if you think I don't like you, or if you don't think I'm being fair with you, I didn't take the test. This is what your teammates said. Okay. And they weren't trying to be mean. They ranked you like I have a very high D, you know, type A personality daughter who's 7 years old. And sometimes she plays with other kids, and she comes home and says, well, they were mean to me. And I say, what did you do for them to be mean to you? Were you bossy? Were you this? And of course, she's 7 years old, so she always says, no, Daddy, it wasn't me, it was them. But we all know, and I know as a coach, that you did something. Now, what did you do? Were you selfish? Were you mean? Were you short? And sometimes she don't even know. She's just wired that way. She's wired to as a you know, a high D to be a driver. And sometimes she drives people, and it pushes them away or creates conflict. Okay, let's see some of the questions. Can you share some examples of how to stay intensely positive? Great question. If you heard me use the word on the during the thing, I used the word intense and positive. And I was coaching with a guy one summer from 22 to 25. Although I knew the Covey stuff, I knew the whole person, I knew the 7 habits, I knew that. And I was implementing it. Like, I was teaching the players the 7 habits, but there was a misalignment between what I was saying and how I was coaching. I was saying, well, people are made up of 4 parts: of body, mind, heart, and spirit. And we need you to be here in the heart. And the heart's needs to love and be loved. And the spirit's needs to connect to, you know, to and be have faith in what you're doing and confidence in what you're doing. But I was motivating through fear, and that confused the players. So they didn't know, like, he's saying this, but he's doing this. Okay. His actions don't, and these kids are smart. They know when you're not telling the truth. I didn't know. I wasn't not trying to tell the truth. I just didn't. I wasn't mature enough yet. I was young, 22, 23, 24. So at 25, I wasn't getting the results that I wanted. And I was the head coach of the Nike team, which is the top 12 players in Tennessee. And I had all these great coaches around me. All these big time championship coaches were like assistant coaches for me. And I was an assistant coach to them some years, and blah, blah, blah. But one dude would just push the players so hard, but he smiled and he was upbeat. And I called him over one day and I said, man, you're really intense, but you're really positive. And he said, nobody ever said you had to go negative. Nobody ever said you had. And those kids loved playing for him. And I walked out of there that day and I said, that's going to be me right there. I'm going to be intense and I'm going to be positive. And from that point forward, I changed my mindset, and man, the kids responded to me. It's kind of the Pete Carroll concept. Dabo Sweeney, I think he's intense and positive. I think, you know, I don't know. I work with Elko some. I don't know how difficult Saban is to play for, but he does know how to get results. So you know, it's got to come with your coaching style, or it won't seem genuine, right? All right, I hope that answers your question. Basketball at the collegiate setting has a tremendous advantage where teams can have strength and condition and mental training before this. I know I coach soccer where new players join the returners and we only have 14-day preseason. How do you approach this scenario? Great question. I believe 100% in coaching the whole person. If you have 14 days, you certainly don't need to neglect the body, the physical part. But I would tell you, if you neglect the mental part and the emotional part and the spiritual part, your players will not be as connected to you. You will not have that competitive intelligence. So I think if it's 14-minute sessions you do on mindset, give the kids tools, right? Like what I do as a coach today is a guy like Eric White's on my team who's on here, who's a college basketball coach at Ole Miss and a number of other places. And if he's not performing or if he's not hitting his sales goals, what I try to do is I try to give him tools. Give the kids tools, mental tools, emotional tools. Like, hey, I noticed that you get distracted when this happens. Hey, I noticed that you're not trying this. Like what I would do is 14-minute meetings, 7 minutes on life, 7 minutes on skill. The average attention span of a high school student is 14 minutes. Okay. And I would do 14-minute meetings, 7 minutes on life, 7 minutes on basketball. And then I'd move to the next thing. And then I'd come back in the afternoon and I'd recap it. Okay, this morning we talked about the habit of being proactive. Proactive means taking full responsibility for your lot in life. Now, I noticed today during practice, every time you made a mistake, you blamed it on other people. Is that an example of being proactive or reactive? And they'd say, no, sir, that's reactive. I'd say, okay, tomorrow when you come in and you make a mistake, I want you to say, my mistake. We don't whine, we don't complain, we don't make excuses. Yes, sir, no excuses. And I would coach and I would this repetition of pounding it in their head. So to your point, if you gave me 20 hours a week, I may spend 15 on the body and 5 on the mind and the heart and the spirit. That's me. That's how I won championships. That's how I built players from the inside out. Most coaches don't believe that. And let me give you one example, then I'll take the next question. I coached with a big-time coach once, and we were bringing these players in from all over the country, and they didn't know each other. And as soon as they came in, I had them sit down in groups, get to know each other, introduce, talk about their family. And he was like, what are you doing? He's like, well, why are we not practicing? Like, we need to get them up and get them moving. And I'm like, they don't know each other. They've never met each other. They don't know anything about each other. And here's my point. When push comes to shove, they will not fight for each other because the chemistry and emotional toughness is not there. That team finished 8th. We should have won a national championship, and we got beat in the final 8, Elite 8 of that because they quit on each other. And my philosophy was they won't fight for each other because they don't know each other. They need to spend time with each other outside of basketball. They need to bond. Okay. And we philosophically disagreed on that. But I think I was right in that scenario. Okay. All right. Next question. Patrick, are you allowed 2 days? I got the book downloaded on my iPad. Good, Patrick. Okay. All right. Let's go back to some more questions here. You guys asked some good questions. Okay. All right. Next question. I think I've covered all the ones in the chat box. Anything else you guys want to ask? It's your time.
Yeah, I got a question.
It's your time. That's what I tell you. It's your time.
All right. Talking about transparency. I think it's very important. You discussed with how you had to convince your girls that they were better and that they should be winning a state championship. They could compete at that level. It's just a fine line between convincing your kids that and then telling them something that it's pretty hard to beat a team that's much better than them.
Yeah.
I don't want to lose their trust, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question because you're right. You don't want to like gas people up to a false positive. And I guess what I was trying to say in that was my team was not the most talented team in Tennessee when we won that championship. And I knew that. Because I could look at a team out of Memphis and go, they're way more talented than us. I could look at a team out of Oak Ridge and go, they're way more talented than us. They got better players. So what I had to do is convince them that we were more disciplined. We executed better. We had better buy-in. We had more trust. We were going to win on the intangibles. Okay. And I actually wrote a small book on this. I don't know if we have any copies of that or not. It's called The Intangibles. And the subtitle was There's More to Winning Than Just Practice. Lots of people practice. The teams that win have high degrees of competitive intelligence. They have high degrees of trust, high degrees of chemistry. Look at the studies in the NBA. The teams that touch the most win the most, meaning high five, pat on the back. The teams that lose the most don't touch the most. They don't look at each other. They don't talk to each other. They have no physical contact with each other, and they actually lose the most games. So to your question, Corey, I felt like my job was convincing them there's nobody in Tennessee better than us. We're going to put the effort in. We've worked harder than everybody else. We've trained more than anybody else. We've been in the classroom harder than anybody else. We've learned our system better than anybody else. And where we're deficient in skill, we're going to make up for in trust and chemistry and buy-in and emotional toughness. And somehow I convinced my players of that year. That was the best job I did of convincing them, because we really weren't the best team in Tennessee, but we won the championship, which is, I think, a good testimony for some of you guys. Does that answer your question? You don't want to blow smoke, right? All right, question. How did you approach pregame talks versus halftime talks? Great question. I was always fascinated, and I'm assuming you guys are too, with the psychological, the motivational and psychological side of coaching. So I spent a lot of time on my pregame talks. I spent a lot of time in trying to touch the heart and the spirit of a person. Okay. So I would really think through it. I would write it up. I didn't have iPads in those days, but I'd write it up. I'd think about it. I would think about how I was going to say it. And I would walk in on the day of the game, and I always had a theme. Every week had a theme, and I'd walk in and talk about that theme. And then I would try to touch their heart. Okay. Because when you touch their heart, then they buy in. So I spent a lot of time on that pregame talk because I thought it was very critical. Now, halftime talks, sometimes we weren't playing good, and I would come in and challenge them directly. Sometimes I would walk in and be disappointed. Sometimes I would walk in, but I would try to stay consistent with my theme. And the more mature I got, the better I got with not being emotional. I mean, I want to be emotional, passionate, fiery, but I didn't want to go in there and just lose it every time, because it doesn't always work. You need to have the thunderbolt when you need it. You don't want to just be so emotional that they go, oh my God, this guy's crazy. Okay. So my halftime talks were based on how we performed. My pregame talks were based on the psychology of winning and the psychology of tapping into their heart. All right. Do you think girls respond better to a male coach, give them more pushback? Yes, absolutely. And I don't know why that is, but I 100% believe that many times. I look at Gino Auriemma. I think sometimes female coaches, I don't know this, I've seen female coaches. I don't know if the dynamic between the female and the female, if they're very strong personalities. And all I can do, obviously I don't know for sure, but all I can see is people I coached against. And sometimes they would just headbutt if they had real strong personalities, and it just wouldn't work. I look at what Auriemma's been able to do at UConn and how they play for him and how hard they play for him. But I also had Pat Summitt at the University of Tennessee and how hard they played for her. So, a lot of the championship coaches that have won in the national championship are female coaches. So there's probably pros and benefits both ways, but I do think females do respond sometimes better to male coaches than females. All right. Bo, let's see. 2 questions.
Yes, sir. 2 questions. Can you hear me, Coach?
Yes, I can.
Okay, Bubba. Hey, first one, going back to the athlete, Paul kind of hit on it earlier. Now, because of COVID-19, we haven't seen our kids in a while. We're trying to communicate with them over via Zoom or whatever, virtual meetings. How would you suggest to keep them motivated to participate in these team meetings, to do their workouts? I mean, it's been a challenge. I mean, it started off great, but now, I'm in Texas, and we have our Sports U app, man. We put everything on there. We do our character development. We put our workouts. We do our Zoom meetings for offensive, defensive meetings, so forth. But it seems like we got the majority of them, but it's like that handful Paul was talking about, is that they're athletes and they're part of the team, but it's kind of pissing us off because we can't get a hold of them to get on there and we meet weekly like they should be with the rest of their teammates. Yep. You have some ideas or thoughts, because that's different platform that we're doing now because of what we're in. What would you suggest and your thoughts?
My first initial thought is, how do you get the team to police themselves? Like, how do you how do you sell the leaders of the team on getting the other people on? And how do you, my best teams there toward the end, they kind of police themselves, right? Like the leaders, the leaders really sold the other teammates on why they need to do. Look, you need to be on here, man. This is important. What we're doing, like we're trying to get better. There comes a time when winter asks what you did all spring and summer. Championships are won in the preseason or in the off season. They're not won during the season. So my first initial thought as soon as you said that was, how do I get my top leaders to say, hey, man, I need your help getting these people on board,
Yes.
and that would be the route I would go. This is why I taught my players the 5 dysfunctions of teams. And if you study the 5 dysfunctions of teams, it's absence of trust, fear of conflict, avoidance of accountability, lack of commitment, which is where we're here, and status and ego. And I guarantee you, your team will see one or all of those dysfunctions this year. And if they know what they are, see, to me, as soon as I hear that, Bo, I hear lack of commitment.
Right.
I'm like, look, you can't be committed to, you can't be halfway in, man. You can't show up whenever you want to. And listen, my kid, 7 years old, she goes to 3 hours of classes a day via Zoom, and it ain't optional. It ain't like, hey, if you want to come. If you don't want to go. It's like, hey, this is what we're doing. And so there's a little bit of lack of buy-in on those people's part, but I would go to your leaders and see if they could peer pressure them into coming.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Coach. Second question. Now I'm gonna flip the script a little bit. Is I'm in inner city school, so it's a challenge. And flipping the script, what about coaches that are on your staff that need to be reactive to reactivate that prey drive? How do we, as leaders? I mean, some of us, we inherit old stuff and can't make any changes until the principal or somebody above us allows us to. So we have to keep those that are on board. So as a leader, man, I know instinctively, like yourself, I'm kind of like you. I want to cut them now. I don't need them.
Yep.
But if I'm going to have to inherit them and I can't get rid of them, how would you flip the script on them? Would you give them the assessments, perception test? Would you give them those things that we just talked about with the kids?
Well, all right. So I got a different perspective on this today than I did when I was in your shoes, because now I run a multi-million-dollar company. I have employees now versus coaches. And what's interesting, Bo, is that at any given time, even right now in my company, I have these 3 that are on fire and these 2 that are not. I have this one that's showing up early and staying late, and this one that's showing up late and leaving early. And I mean, and imagine just working with me every day, and I'm pushing them as hard as I can, Bo. I mean, I am pushing and setting expectation, but I can't fire them every other day. I can't just get rid of everybody. So what I have learned by managing employees is I want to reconnect with each employee in a different way to try to get them on board with me. It's kind of the same way I built a team, is that if I notice a person's prey drive has been deactivated, I want to spend some time with them going, what can I do what can I do to be a better leader for you? What can I do to reactivate your drive? I notice that you seem a little disengaged. And I will tell you, when you're dealing with adults, they do not yield to authority, Bo, like kids do. This is one of the biggest things. I mean, I had one of my first employees when I started my company say, look, I ain't a high school basketball coach. I'm a full grown woman, and I don't respond to this. And I had to really learn that at any given time, if I got a staff of 4, 5, 6, 10 people, then I can't motivate them all the same, and I can't fire them every time I don't like something they do. And so I really have to try to go to them and go, what can I do to reactivate this drive? What can I do to get you to a higher frequency? What's your interest level in this? How do I do it? And then expose them to things, and this is one of the things a lot of coaches don't do. Expose them to books and audios and videos. And I used to go to coaching clinics just like you guys do, but the best thing I ever did, and please hear me on this, is I went to business things and studied business people. And I would go over here and study how Zig Ziglar motivated people, and how does Tony Robbins touch people, and how does this person touch people, and how does Covey, and then I would bring it back over with me to the sporting world. And most of my coaches had never even thought about doing any of those things. I mean, they hadn't read a book. They hadn't tried. If it wasn't a coaching book, they didn't read it. You know what I'm saying? And so I tried to activate that. So good question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. Can we exchange emails with each other to continue the conversation if people are interested? High school coaches? Absolutely. If you guys want to put your email addresses in here. And I tell you what, if you guys register for this, I believe I have all of your email addresses. And if I do, I don't mind if you guys, if you want me to, I can send them back out to you. You just need to let me know. I can have my assistant send them out to you because I think I captured everybody's email address. But if you want to share it in here and you guys share it to connect with each other, I think it's a great idea. High school coaches are special people. I believe that with 100% of my heart. And I loved every second. And you guys may be wondering, why did you retire? Why you may be asking, why did you retire from high school coaching? Listen, I went real hard from 18 to 31. I'm talking 80 to 120 hour work weeks. I built a national championship program. I did everything I could do. And to be honest with you, when I was around 30 or 31, a company came to me and offered me $150,000 to be their coach of their company. And at that time I was writing books and I was, I had 4 or 5 books out in the market. I was getting speaking engagements that they were paying me at that time, $5,000 a pop. And then that company came along and offered me $150,000 to be their coach. And I was ready for a change. I was ready for something new. And I knew I had something big inside of me. I just didn't know. So I retired from athletic coaching at 31 and started my coaching company. But I had that. If that company wouldn't offer me that, I probably would have still been coaching because I didn't think to do that. Because a lot of people ask me that question, why did you retire? Especially at the peak of my career. And listen, you eat banana pudding for 10 years, guys, you eventually get tired of eating it. It don't matter how good the banana pudding is. Okay. Sometimes you just need a shift. And I needed a shift in my life. All right. 5:59, back to intense positive. Jane is a senior. She had a rough week of practice. She spent 4 days coaching girls to beat the press of a big game. Jane makes 3 mistakes and it leads to a huge momentum swing of the game. Be intense, positive, and share what you would say. That's good. Jane, you're a great player. I love coaching you, but let me tell you something. We have to stay focused. We can't make back-to-back mistakes. Now, you understand that because of the way we coached you, right? And I love coaching you, right? Like when you're on, you're on. You may be one of the best players I've ever coached, okay? But we got to go to work on staying focused because I notice when you get tired, you get unfocused and you turn the ball over, and that really changes the momentum of the game. Jane, you with me? Okay, that's how I be intense and positive. Notice how I use affirmation while I was correcting her behavior. I could have said, Jane, for the love of God, you made 3 mistakes. We're going to lose the ball game because of you, Jane. We always lose because of you. That's intense and negative, which is what I would have said from 22 to 25.
Yeah.
Okay? 25, I'm like, Jane, I love coaching you, girl. I love it. You're one of the best players I ever coached, but we got to work on this one thing, okay? You with me now? Let's go. I think about my 7-year-old daughter. I could go home tonight and just unload on her when she don't do something. And she'll do it. She'll clean her room. She'll get in bed. But we may have to go through 17 rounds to get her to do it. When I say, hey, Daddy's so excited to see you. I missed you. You're beautiful. I love you. Let's go to work. Daddy's going to get in here and help you clean your room tonight. And then we're going to watch a little TV together. If it all goes right, we'll have a little ice cream later on. Like that's how I am today versus how I used to be. Okay. Now I would tell you this, and Eric White can tell you this, who's on here with me. My nature is hardcore. It is not, I have to work to be positive, guys. I want you guys to understand that.
Amen.
like I'm not by nature. I'm a hardcore stone cold killing machine.
Dude.
All right. You asked Tim Grover. Tim Grover spoke before me the other day, and we spoke together at 10X. And this is before I even ever talked to him. I spoke right before him at 10X to 10,000 people. And I'm smiling and upbeat and packaging and delivering my content. And Tim Grover got up there, who's hardcore, no nonsense, and he had me stand up in front of the whole group. And he said, look, don't let Coach Burt fool you for 1 second. Behind that positive is a stone cold killing machine. And I'm telling you that because I have to temper how hardcore I am because people can't handle it today. People are not as tough as you are. People are not as tough as you used to be. And that is very important. I have to remind myself, hey, be positive, be upbeat, be intense. Okay. So just want you to know that I struggle with that just like you guys do. What do you do to help yourself be see positive or stay positive? What I read, I have a very strict regimen. I made a decision to go pro in my life, all areas, body, mind, heart, spirit. I went from 191 pounds to 168. I do a very aggressive form of like kickboxing, tap out. That was very popular 10 years ago for 45 minutes to an hour a day. I listen to a sermon every morning. I end my day with a sermon, and then I listen to positive things throughout the day to keep my mind in a positive mindset. You know, I made a business decision last year to form a partnership with someone, and I ended up losing about $300,000, $400,000, and it was just devastating to me. It was a good friend of mine turned bad partner, devastated my wife, devastated me, and man, it was so hard to wake up every day and be positive. I'm telling you, man, I was distraught. Like, I mean, I lost $300,000 or $400,000, you know, on a bad decision that I couldn't get out of, and so I have to work at this just like you do, and I want you to know that. I don't wake up positive I have a high D personality, and I wake up angry. I wake up like we ain't moving fast enough. I wake up, why are we not doing this? I wake up, you know, so I have to temper that, or people just couldn't handle it. Great question. Okay, depending on the talent level at your disposal, how would you approach and prepare your team to play against Gino Auriemma? Gino Auriemma used to have a quote that said they used to ask him about how he prepared for his schedule, and he said he prepared to beat the top 5 people on his schedule, and if he could beat the top 5 people on his schedule, he'd beat everybody else. And I always thought that was an incredible way to look at it. I would ask my team constantly, could we beat the number 1 team in Tennessee with this effort? And if the answer is no, then it ain't good enough. Could we beat this team? Like, it don't matter who we beat a bad team. Could we beat the best team in Tennessee the way we played tonight? That was the standard. Okay. It wasn't, did we win the game by playing somebody pitiful? It was, could we have beaten the best team in the country tonight? And the answer is no. And I wanted the players to say that, not me say it. I wanted them to say it. I wanted them to be disappointed actually when we won, but they underperformed. And my championship team really did that. Like, they knew we go in the locker room after beating a team by 30 points, and everybody be like this. And I'd be like, what's wrong, ladies? And my leader would say, we couldn't have beat the best team in Tennessee tonight with that effort. We're embarrassed. Embarrassment is an activator of prey drive. Okay. Exposure is an activator. Competition is an activator. Environment is an activator. So I would plan to beat the best people. Now, if you're rebuilding a program, as people asked me this the other day, if you're rebuilding a program, do you need to get some wins? Absolutely. Do you need to build some momentum? Absolutely. But I still played the best teams. I got my butt kicked, but I played the best teams to show my players and to show me what kind of effort it was going to take to be the best. And so we got beat by 30, and I would go, okay, now I know what we got to do. Now I know where we got to get to. Now I know what level we got to play at. So did it hurt our confidence? Yeah, but it was also good for us to show what it takes. Do you feel like you're in a good mood and your face doesn't know it? This is a challenge for me. This is good. Oh, me. This is a really good question. I think you gotta show upbeat, positive. I think some people are really bad at when they're in a bad mood, and they just can't hide it, man. They just can't hide their frustration. And I would tell you, doing what I do today, when I'm speaking in front of thousands of people or doing a summit, like I'm supposed to be on a summit this Saturday that they tell me 100,000 people are gonna eventually watch, right? And Tony Robbins is on there, Damon John, all the big time players are on there, and I'm gonna be on there on Saturday. And what if I wake up Saturday morning and I don't feel like it? What if I had a bad day? What if I got in a fight with my wife? What if my kid's mad at me? Like, it don't matter. I got to get on there and smile and be upbeat. Like, I started this morning at, I don't know, 5:20. I've done 400 of these today. You guys showed up and you expect me to be my best. So it ain't fair to you for me to go, I don't feel like doing it, or I'm in a bad mood, or, so what I've trained myself to do, to your question, Austin, is just be a professional, man. And professionals show up every day, and they don't care about their feelings. They don't care about their moods. They don't care about none of that. They show up and deliver the goods. I coach beside one of the top football coaches in the country named Gary Rankin. And Gary Rankin was at Riverdale. He won 4 championships at Riverdale. Then he went to Alcoa and won, I don't know, 4 more. Maybe he's won 10 or 12 in Tennessee. But he was dominant in Tennessee. And the dude was just consistent, man. And you know what he did that I was impressed with? I would go over and watch their film sessions. And when a kid made a mistake, he would ask the kid, now, why did you miss that block? And the kid would say, well, you know, I'm sorry, coach, I missed it. And he'd go, no, it ain't your fault. It's your coach's fault. If your offensive line coach would have taught you how to block better, you wouldn't have missed that block. And so here's what the offensive line coach would do. The offensive line coach would get embarrassed, get mad, and he'd make sure that kid never missed a block again. He held the coaches responsible for the player's behavior, which was one of the most fascinating things I ever saw. He would say, it's your fault. He would say, it's your fault because you didn't teach them how to do that. And they would go, oh, you're right, my bad. And they would get better. And I thought that was a really, like when we make mistakes in my company now, I say it's my fault because I hadn't trained my people appropriately. We didn't teach them enough. We didn't show them as many times as we should have. We didn't talk about it enough. It ain't their fault. It's my fault. Okay, Bo, what's your question?
Just chime in what you said that I could share with the group. Kind of because I've been a defense coordinator for the past 25 years, an assistant head football and AD. But what I always tell my coaches, what you just said in that example, and I start every season when I'm teaching defense or offense or special teams, I tell them, hey, it's our responsibility as coaches. If our kid does something out there on the field, your position, you're at fault. You're the one who's got to be blamed. And I tell them, first, number one, tell them what it is that you want them to do. The first W is what. What is it? Second is the how. You got to show them how to do it, demonstrate, explain. And then third is when to do that, and to activate, to respond or react to a certain block or that certain, route. And then most importantly is that fourth W with a why, the light bulb strikes, is this is why we do it this way because, and then everything else will fit. To me, I think my kids now, they know that if they make a mistake, oh, coach, I'll call them to the side. So what happened there? What do you think? So I'll get them to reflect quickly and give me an answer. Well, where were your eyes? Did you read your key? So right now they'll answer the question themselves. But if it's something that they're repeatingly over again, making the same mistake, and I go ask your position coach. So now I'll get with the position coach later on in the evening after practice, and we'll have our meetings. And I'll say, okay, we had this error, this mistake. How are we going to correct it, coach? How you been teaching it? So we go back to the drawing board and see how the coach is teaching it. Obviously, kids learn their different ways of learning, but something there is not connecting. So we as a staff or professionals, we have to find those loopholes so we're connected to our kiddos. There's one more before that. One of the other coaches or guys on the meeting today said, you talked about specifics when you're trying to correct a kid, especially goes well with the parents. And I tell the kids, well, why I don't get no playing time, coach? Why am I on the field? How I do this? And I said, well, it's not like you said, the old school coach, you ain't fast enough. You ain't strong enough. I don't give them that answer anymore. But it's the 3 things I tell them. Hey, 1, knowledge of assignment, man. If you don't know knowledge of assignment and line up right, I can't put you out there. Number 2, execution of that assignment. You don't execute, baby, you ain't gonna be out there too. And number 3, I need results. Those 3 things. Parent meetings, they go over smooth. I tell them at the beginning of the season. I tell them during the season when a parent's upset because their son not playing a lot, we'll say, look, your son doesn't have a knowledge of assignment. He don't know how to line up right. 2, he's not executing the assignment because he's lined up wrong already. And 3, I can't get no results because he ain't doing the first 2 right. So anyhow, I thought I'd share that.
What I think you've done there, Bo, which is really important, is you've taken complicated things and you've packaged them. Okay.
Yes.
And I think that's very important to say. There's really 3 reasons. There's 3 things, 3 criteria I use when a person plays. Do they have knowledge of assignment? Do they know this? Do they do this? One of the things I failed to mention the other day that may be a good resource for you guys is I wrote a book called The Anatomy of Winning. And it was a book that I wrote with a championship coach, and it breaks down how I use the whole person theory. We walk through the season. It's a pretty interesting book. It's specifically for coaches,
Coach, what's the title?
Called The Anatomy of Winning.
Okay.
Like the anatomy of how you build a championship program. And I only wrote that after I built a championship, and I wrote it with a 10-time championship coach. So you can get that at coachburt.com, but I think you guys would enjoy that. All right, I got time for one or two more. Then I got to go home and see that 7-year-old girl and my wife, who's 8 months pregnant, about to have our second baby.
Right.
All right, Austin Ward, how do you work with players who are so hard in themselves that they shut down in the face of any adversity? This would go back to that personality profile, Austin. Is I had a player that was the best player I ever coached, and she scored 4,000 points for me, which was amazing in 4 years. She was a Miss Basketball, and she had the emotion. She had the emotional mindset of her mother. Her mother was very emotional. Mother would get mad real easy. She'd break down. She'd start crying. She'd cause commotion, and so. But she had the toughness of her dad. Her dad was tough and her mom was weak-minded. So I had to constantly affirm her. I had to say, look, it goes back to that positive and intense. Man, you're a great player. I can't wait. You're going to be a Miss Basketball. Don't shake it off. Don't worry about it. Move to the next thing, right? Like I had to constantly just, I had to just help her there. And I'm going to move in this other room so I can plug my computer in. But that was my problem, right? She would get negative very easy and get emotional very easy. And because of that, I had to work in how I spoke to her. I had to say positive. I had to be positive and intense with her because every time there was some adversity. I remember one day she broke down and started crying because her shoe, we ordered new Nike shoes for all the players and her shoe didn't fit properly. So she was whining and crying, and I said, what's wrong with you? She said, my shoes don't fit right, coach, and I can't score 1,000 points and my shoes don't fit. And I'm like, I understand. Look, let's not major in the minors here, girl. Let's get you some shoes that fit your feet and you're going to be just fine. Okay. All right. Last question. Or two more questions. As a workaholic, how do you evaluate the importance of sleep? Is it overrated? No, it is not overrated. I believe when you really study the body, top performers rest as much as they practice, guys. And I'm talking about, you study top MMA fighters, you study top NFL players, they have to rest. Entertainers, rest replenishes. So I'd get about 8 hours of sleep per night, every night. I can go on 5, I can go on 7, but I'm not at my best. And it's optimal. And I would consider myself a workaholic, just like you. Yeah, Shannon said Federer got 10 to 12 hours. I couldn't do 12 hours, but each person, they say Trump gets, 4 hours of sleep. I don't know if that's true or not, but my point to you is I believe sleep and nutrition are critical. And as a coach, this is something I was terrible at. Like I'm in the best shape of my life today at 43. I'm at 168. I'm lean. I've got high levels of energy. I'm on the right vitamins. I'm on the right sleep plan. I go to the #1 energy doctor in the world. But man, when I was coaching, I ate poorly, slept too late. Slept too, little, drank too much. I really wish I would have treated myself at a higher frequency. Like today, I treat myself like a world-class athlete. And I do that because I want to help so many people on the planet. And man, I just can't make it if I don't sleep and eat and exercise. I just can't do it. From 20 to 30, I ate poorly, didn't exercise enough, drank too much, whatever the case may be. I could have been even better than I was if I would have been sharper on some things. So good question. All right, last question. Favorite drill or exercise they use to challenge or enhance mental toughness? Man, if I told you, Corey, all the things I did, you just can't do those things today. We did bull in the ring with girls basketball players. We brought them in at 4:30 in the morning. We had this toughness competitions, tough mutter type stuff. Tough stuff. And I don't think you could get away with those things today. It was a different time 15 years ago. But we pushed the players at a very high level, and it forced them to get competitive. And we would break through their mental barriers. This is why some adults do tough mutters. They do these things that force them to break through their mental barriers. And that was really what I was trying to do, was break them through mentally, emotionally, physically, to where they would get to a level they would go, man, I could do. Practice is so much harder than the game, right? Games are easy. That's what I wanted my players thinking. Games are so freaking easy, man. We can win this easy because practice is so hard. Okay. Great question. Anybody got anything else they want to end us up with tonight? Eric White is on here. Okay. Yep. Eric White's on here. You can email him, eric@coachburt.com. He can show you my eating plan that I'm on, that I lost all the weight on. We can talk to you about the health division of our company, what we do there to get you in the best shape of your life. And I do want to say this before I get off. Many of you are just like me. I was a high school basketball coach making anywhere between 40 and 50,000 a year. And I figured out how to generate millions of dollars through speaking, coaching, training, writing books. And if some of you probably may have that desire, like you want to write books, you want to speak, you may have a desire to do what I do now. I know a lot of former coaches come to me and say, how did you do it? Or you may want to do it at some point in the future. We have programs where I teach you exactly how I went from high school basketball coach to building a multi-million-dollar business coaching program. So if you're interested in that, I do a summit. I'm doing one in the summer in July. You may be interested in coming to, and I'll break it down. This is how I took what I did at Riverdale and flipped it into books, and then flipped that into speaking, and then flipped that into coaching, and then flipped that into licensing, and then flipped it into online academies. So that may be something that some of you may be interested in. And if you are, just email eric@coachburt.com, and he'll give you an overview of how we do that. All right, one more question. I saw a person raise their hand. Who was it that raised their hand? Sorry.
It was me.
Austin, go ahead. Finish this up.
Hey, so you're talking about that personality profile. You said you do it for $99 a kid.
Yes.
So how do we access that, and how do we go about that real fast?
I think you can just email. There's a couple ways you can do it. You can go the best way and easiest way would be to email eric@coachburt.com, ERIC@coachburt.com. And he'll get you a link. And Austin, you can literally get on there, and it's on my Monster Assessments division. You can get on there and take as many as you want, or take one, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Coach Burt, last thing, that ebook, you said they're going to send that out via email.
Yeah, the ebook on confidence is going to come back out as soon as they get the glitch worked out, because it would only open on certain things. And I apologize. We didn't know that until we sent it out, and we found out that it didn't work.
We appreciate you, man. Appreciate you, Coach.
All right, body language. I didn't get to that one. Sorry. Body language. How much time would you spend learning all the nuances? I think it's very important, body language, man. I think it's very important what kind of message you send to the world. And I think you got to be aware. You got to have an awareness of what kind of body language you put out. Is it positive? Is it negative? Is it open? Is it inviting? Is it upbeat? I mean, just look at Pete Carroll, man. Pete Carroll is really good. He's got upbeat, positive energy. People want to be around him. Players want to play hard for him. You know, look at Dabo Sweeney, how he coaches and how the kids warm up to him. I mean, I think you can look at some of the greats out there and see how they correspond with their players. And like I told you, by nature, I can be a negative person. I've trained myself to be positive. I've trained myself to be upbeat. I've trained myself to step back and assess what my body language is saying. Because some days I'll go to the office and I'm fired up and I'm ready to just light into everybody. And by the time I get there, I'm calm and I smile, and I may push them, but I push them in a way that I think is positive and upbeat. And I want to bring them. What's the result? The result is I want to reach inside of them and pull something great out of them. It's not, I want to shut them down. And sometimes coaches use tactics that shut the players down. It don't work. Okay, you got to rethink that. So, guys, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this tonight. You guys are great. Thank you for spending time with me. That's the best thing you can ever give me. If I can help you, email eric@coachburt.com, who's on my team on the assessment piece. I'd love to get you the assessments. If you want to be a coach or do things like me, let's talk about the summit, or pick up a copy of the book, Anatomy of Winning. That's at coachburt.com. That'd be a good thing. That'd be some good reading for you. So God bless you. Thank you for doing what you do. I believe in you. And you guys are going to do great because you're interested, man, in your potential. And that's the number one thing you can be, is interested in everything you can be. You guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
God bless you. I'm Coach Michael Burt, and the number one book that I've written over the last couple of years that could help you during these unusual times is a book I wrote called Inside the Mind of a Monster. Now, I want to give you that book. All you have to do is text 678-506-7543. Because when you text that in, I'm going to give you a copy of my book, Inside the Mind of a Monster. And it's going to show you the habits and mindsets of top producers, and how they attack every single day versus play defense. Don't you want to play offense? Get this book. I'm giving it to you, and I'm telling you, I'm going to turn you into a legendary creature.